Well, hey, everybody. Happy Tuesday. I get a chance to show you something kind of cool today. And that is the power of what converters can do now. They used to be called inverters because it would take voltage and it would increase it. They've had this technology for years and years and years and years in cars. It takes a 12-volt battery and it makes it 110. So you could run a variety of different things depending on how much that inverter would put out. Now they have little boxes like this that weigh only about 2 pounds that you can easily put into a carry-on bag, or probably more realistically a checked bag, and you can travel anywhere in the world and you can use your stuff. Yeah, kind of cool. So it doesn't matter if you're a European person or you're a person traveling from the States. You can take a little device like this, and with a simple little switch, you can turn it on, and you've got the ability to take that voltage wherever you're at and make it suitable for the equipment that you have with you, as long as it doesn't exceed, on this little one that I have, 200 watts. Now, the average sewing machine is going to take about 100 watts to operate, and that includes the motor and the light assembly. And if you're using a non-incandescent bulb, you'll have even more of a tolerance as far as what you can operate. But even a Husqvarna machine that's going to have that bigger Swedish motor is only going to be able to pull about 100 watts when you're operating the light and the motor together. So that's kind of cool. That's kind of super cool. Yeah. So let me show you how this kind of works, and I'll kind of do a little bit of backpedaling and show you what I ordered, and also kind of how it'll arrive if you happen to do the same thing. So I ordered this from eBay. After looking at a lot of different converters that are out there, there's just a ton of them. And some of them are proven as far as they've been out there for a while. They really have some good science behind them. And others are a little bit more questionable. So I ended up choosing this one after doing all of my vetting. And it came by UPS very quickly. These folks are like all over it, which I thought was really neat. And it's going to come in a box like this. Again, for sewing machine purposes, you only need about 100 watts to operate even the bigger machines like the Fofs and the Swedish Beauties that typically are equipped with a 1 amp or larger motor. And so I wanted to go with something that would give me enough flexibility that I could use it for any machine that was sent to the workshop from anywhere in Europe. It doesn't matter if it comes from Germany or, like the one we're going to be looking at today, come all the way from England. And this will give you the ability to operate machines that are 220, 230, all the way up to 250 volts with this little converter. And you can see the brand name and everything if you decide you want to pick up one yourself. It's called Power Bright. Power Bright. And the thing I liked about it is it's got a plug-in point, as you could see when we looked at the actual converter. It's got a plug-in point that doesn't require that you use a bunch of converters on the front of this converter itself, or adapters, I should say. It doesn't require a bunch of adapters that you have to plug into this. It's multifaceted, so pretty much any plug-in that you get from anywhere in Europe. Let's say you're on an eBay site and the person says, well, this sewing machine is set up to operate in England. No problem at all. This will already be set up where it'll be able to take an adapter like this that the machine might be set up with, and you'll be able to plug it into this converter straight away. And the same thing is if you're over in Europe, and I know we have a lot of folks that follow this channel all around the world. We've got friends from Brazil, we've got friends from Germany, from England, from Australia, anywhere in the world. This little adapter will be able to accommodate that individual over there as well. Because when you're setting this adapter, this converter up, I'm so excited I can't even hardly talk. When you're setting up this converter, when you're first taking it out of the box, you'll want to take a note that on the back of this converter, I'll kind of spin it around so you can see that. When you're first getting this out of the box, you're going to find, and I'm going to unplug this just to be extra safe. Hold on a second. There we go, as I'm tipping everything over. So when you get this out of the box, it most likely is going to be plugged into one of these sockets up here. You can see all the way on top, we've got 240 volts, 220, 200, and then finally 110. This is, as it says, this is the input voltage. This is the input voltage. So depending on where you are in the world, you've got to look at your voltage, where you're at in the world. And if your voltage is 240 and you buy one of these converters, then you plug this into that top one right there. Because this, again, is the voltage that's coming into the converter. And yes, it's made in China. No surprise. See? If your voltage is 220, then you're going to be plugging this in to the 220 socket right there. And finally, if your voltage is 200, I think pretty much everywhere now in the European marketplace, everybody's operating right around 230. So if you're over in Europe and you buy one of these converters so that you can operate a US sewing machine on it, then you, in all likelihood, would be wise to plug it into the 240. Because if you're operating in most of the places in France, in England, in Ireland, in pretty much anywhere in that neck of the woods, most of those folks are operating at 230. So I would recommend plugging it just into the 240. Then you would plug it into your outlet using an adapter. You would plug it in using an adapter that they provide similar to this. And then you would be able to plug it in to your outlet. This is the outlet that you'll see most often used in Germany. And then certainly there are other adapters that you could pick up as well. So over in Europe, you would have more flexibility in what you would be able to use this converter for in operating sewing machines. Let's say you buy, again, a machine from eBay and it's US voltage. This would give you the ability then to set it up like this, plug it again for European voltage into that 240 socket on the back, and then spin this around. And then you would plug your US sewing machine into here. So the input into this would be right around 230 to 240 volts. But as soon as you turn this on and you plug it into this outlet, you'd be able to operate that US sewing machine on this converter anywhere in the world, but over in Europe in particular. But for our purposes today, we don't want to set this up as if we're in Europe. We want to set it up as if we're going to be testing a machine that came from London, England, and we're wanting to take this converter and step it up from 110 all the way to 230 volts. So we've got to change everything now so that we're set up properly. So we don't need this adapter. We can take that off straight away. And we need to spin this back around and set this up for US voltage. So again, if you're a US consumer and you buy a machine that's set up for the European marketplace, you're going to be taking this out and putting it down here for the 110 voltage coming in. Okay? So up here, you're in Europe. down here you're in the US and you bought a machine or you have a machine that needs to step up that voltage from 110 up to 240. So we're all set here. Let me spin this back around. Get this kind of plugged back into its little position over there. I'm going to plug that back in. And now I'm going to turn this on because we're all set up for US voltage. And this does come with fuses as well. This particular model comes with extra fuses that are going to be rated up to 250 volts. So when you buy an adapter like this, you get the adapter, and then you also get extra fuses, and then you also get this little adapter to go along with the transformer as well. So I'll set all that up there. All right, all that blah blah blahing, we're finally plugged in. And now we need to take a look at the machine that we're going to be testing today. And some of you that watch me faithfully have already seen this machine. This is the one that Adam sent from London, England. And you can tell right away that it's not a US machine when you look at the adapter that we're working with. That almost looks like an adapter like you would use for a US dryer or something like that. And this particular one is rated up to 250 volts and draws up to 13 amps. So that's a lot of juice, isn't it? But our little converter is able to handle this machine because it operates off of the wattage of the machine. And as you'll be able to see, the wattage on the machine, if you didn't see the unboxing, the wattage on the machine, you can see on this little data plate right back here. The motor is going to be operating with 230 volts. Hopefully you can see that. 230 volts, and it's going to be drawing 80 watts. And then the light itself is going to be operating off of 250 volts, and it's going to be drawing 25 watts. So those of you that are mathematicians are already at the finish line. You know that I'm not a math person. But you can see if we add the 80 and the 25, our converter has to be able to support at least 105 watts. 105 watts. And our converter is good up to 200 watts. So we've got almost twice the amount of voltage of wattage that we need to handle this Swedish Beauty. And this Swedish Beauty is a class 20. So it's going to be one of the older green machines that was made by Husqvarna. All right, so let's try it out. Let's see what happens, huh? This is exciting. We're going to first of all plug our very cool looking plug-in into the front of the converter, which we just did. And now this converter is saying, okay, let's do it. Let's do it. Oh, and I should say a hello to Emma and Joelle, and also my friend Solange. And I did get a nice note from Solange, and I hope I'm saying the name correctly. She is actually, if I'm not mistaken, is from the West Coast and is going to be looking to send a machine to the workshop. So that's kind of exciting. And she specifically said, I joined one of the recent live streams. I think it was for that newer machine that I presented to all of you. And I felt so welcome. And between you and the moderating team, you really made me feel like I was a part of the Cow Country family. And that's exactly what we're aiming for, isn't it? We want everyone that visits either a live stream like this or attends a premiere. We want you to feel like you're part of the family. Okay. So let's see if we got some juice over here. And again, the juice coming into this machine right now with this converter is right around 230 volts. So here's our machine. Our on switch for the light is right back here. Go ahead and push that. Hold on a second. I'm going to shut my heater off just in case we're drawing a little bit too much juice. I don't see a light yet. Let me try this again. Make sure I have this plugged in correctly. Yep, we've got that set up correctly. I wonder if my bulb burned out. Remember, the bulb again that came from the UK is a huge incandescent bulb. Trying to see if we may have popped it. Ah, there we go. I think that's a super cool light, don't you? And if we did a bypass on this and connected it to 110, the light would still come on, but it would be a lot dimmer than it is now, a lot dimmer. So now we've taken 110 volts and we've made it into 220 to 250 volts. Actually, I think the light specifically said it runs off of 250 volts. So very cool. That worked. Now let's see if we can power up the motor. So our light is still on. That's good. And yes, I'm wearing rubber sole shoes just in case. Just in case. So this is again our foot controller. The foot controller that came with the machine. And I haven't tested this yet. And you can see it's got a plug-in like this, like you'll see on the US version foot controllers. Let me show you. Whoops. Forgot to shut off the air compressor. So if you have a Swedish Beauty, probably a class 20, you're going to have a foot controller that looks less like this one and looks more like this one. And you can see the plugins are identical. This is the plug-in on the US version. This is the plug-in on the one from London, England, that's rated for the European marketplace. Could you take a foot controller like this and plug it into this machine? Go ahead and type in the chat if you would. Are these interchangeable? Because they've got exactly the same plug. They're both original Husqvarna type foot controllers, right? So can we just as easily use this one? Let me see what you're writing in the chat. I'm just curious what your response will be. Yeah, the bulb does look antique, doesn't it, Emma? It looks like one of those old-fashioned ones like you'd see that were made originally with the old style filaments. So what do you think, you guys? If we've got both of these foot controllers, can we use either one? Here's our American one. This is our US one. This is our London, England one right here. Take that little cord off of there. So Emma's saying the voltage might differ. I would read the foot controller. Yeah. So the simple answer is you cannot, you should not, you must not plug a US rated foot controller into a European machine that we've stepped up to 230 to 250 volts. If we plug this in to this machine right now, even though this adapter will fit into this machine, if we do that, we're going to totally fry this foot controller. Because like Joel hinted at, if you look at the voltage rating for this Electrolux made, and yes, Electrolux did make foot controllers for Husqvarna, you'll see that it's rated at 110 volts. So if we plug this into this European machine right now that we're stepping up to 230 to 250 volts, you'll hear a zip, and this foot controller will be done. It'll be fried. I think I told a lot of you when I first arrived in Germany, when I was living there, I had an adapter that allowed me to plug a radio into the German outlet, and I didn't even think about the voltage difference, and it came on for about a microsecond, and then it was done. It fried the entire innards of that radio. The same thing would happen to this foot controller, so we definitely don't want to use this one. This one down here is already wired and rated for 250 volts. So we can use this one on the machine from London, England. Now, the opposite, if we were living in Europe, let's say all of us moved to Europe. Not a bad idea, right? We all move to Europe and we buy a US Husqvarna that comes out of the great state of Oregon, okay? Comes out of Oregon. And it's got a US plug and it's got a foot controller like this. We can take our converter again when we set it up, and we can move that little pin in the back to 230 volts or 240 volts, I think is what it was. And then we could plug our US machine into the front of here. But right now we're operating at a totally different voltage, and we're using it for this machine out of London, England. So that's the cool thing about these converters that I'm kind of showing you today, is you can use them to step up the voltage like we are right now. So we can operate this machine at 230 to 250 volts, or we can step it down. If we're over in Europe, we can step it down from 230 to 240 volts all the way to 110 and operate a US machine using this same converter. Yeah, that's kind of it. So I'm going to move this right now so I don't have a brain lapse and fry my foot controller with this machine. So now we're going to try plugging this foot controller in and see whether or not this converter can handle the motor and the light at the same time. Kind of rotate this a little bit. All right, so here's our plug. We're going to try sticking that in and see if we get anything. No, I didn't ask Adam over in the UK. I did not ask Adam if there was a specific issue with this foot controller or motor. So right now I've got the foot controller plugged in. I'm pushing down on the foot controller, and the motor is not engaging. And I have a bobbin on here right now because there's something mechanically wrong with this machine where the balance wheel when the clutch is engaged, the balance wheel is not moving freely. It's kind of locking up. So by putting a bobbin on here, it's as if I'm going to wind a bobbin, and the only thing that's turning then is between the motor and the bobbin itself. And it's moving freely, as I think you can see that. But right now, we're not getting anything from this foot controller. And this is a proper foot controller for this machine. It is rated at up to 250 volts. So we've got a dilemma right now. We've got a dilemma. We don't know. We know that we're getting power. We know that our little converter over here is stepping up our voltage from 110 up to at least 250 volts because this light is rated at 250 volts. But right now we've got our foot controller plugged in and it's not working. We're not getting anything. So how do we, with you guys being as smart as you are, how do we determine whether it's a foot controller issue or whether or not the motor that Adam sent from London, England is bad? Or maybe the motor doesn't have motor brushes in it. How do we test this motor since the foot controller isn't working? It's not responding. What do we do? What do we do? Hey, everybody. Looks like Michelle joined us as well. Welcome, Michelle. Good to see you. So any guesses, you guys? What do we do? Our light is working, but our foot controller is not responding. Can we test this machine still? Nobody wants to jump in on this one, huh? Well, let me give you the answer. Hey, Paula. Welcome, Paula. Okay, so here's the answer. And this is true of whether you have a machine like this that we're stepping up to 230 volts using this converter. It doesn't matter whether we're using this machine in the US and we're stepping up the voltage, or whether we're in the US and we're using a standard sewing machine. If you ever get a sewing machine and you plug the foot controller in and the motor does not power up, like we're getting right now with this one, we're not getting a thing. There is a way to bypass the foot controller, because all the foot controller does when you depress that foot controller down like this is it completes the circuit. Again, I've shown you the wiring setup before in machines. When you're wiring a machine like this, whether you're in Europe or whether you're in the US, you're going to have 3 zones typically. You're going to have 2 hot zones that will power and provide continuous electricity to this light. You're going to have 2 intermittent zones where you're going to, on 2 of them, you're going to connect 2 of the leads of the motor, and then you're going to connect the other 2 leads to the other 2 zones. That probably doesn't make any sense. So think of it again as 3 zones, right? If we have 3 zones, 1, 2, 3, on, let's just say that zone 1 and 3 are going to be the 2 hot continuous zones. We're going to be connecting the light to those so we have continuous electricity. On zone 1 and 2, we can connect the motor leads, and then on zones 2 and 3, we can connect the foot controller leads. Let me say that again. Zone 1, 2, and 3. Zone 1 and 3 will be the light typically, and unless you're dealing with a FOF machine, then it's going to be zones 1 and 2. I know it gets a little bit confusing. But zone 1, 2, and 3, 2 hot zones will be connecting the light. And then on, say, zone 1 and 2, you'll connect the motor leads. And then on 2 and 3, you'll connect the foot controller leads. Then when you push that foot controller down, it completes the circuit between the 3 zones so that the motor will fire up. And if that doesn't make complete sense, don't worry about it. But my point is, This is designed as a way to complete the circuit. And right now we're trying to complete the circuit and we're not getting any response from the motor. So either the motor is bad, the foot controller is bad, or we've got a plug-in issue inside of this area of the machine right here where it's not making good conductivity. It's not connecting properly. So our bypass, so we can check it, I'm going to take this out of there. Our bypass can be a wire like this, okay? And this is wire that was bought in the US, but again, with wiring like this, it doesn't matter as to the voltage. It matters as to how many amps can this wire support. This particular wire is a 16 gauge wire, and 16 gauge wire can handle up to about 30 amps. And we already know from looking at the plug, remember we looked at the plug before we put it into the converter, and it says that it's going to be drawing up to about 15 amps. So this will handle twice what potentially is being converted with this particular Swedish Beauty. The max, what I'm trying to say is the max that we're going to be drawing with this machine plugged into our converter is going to be 15 amps. And this will handle up to 30 amps, right? So what we're going to do is this. I'm going to be safe than sorry, and I'm going to shut our converter off temporarily. Our converter is off now, which means our light is off too. And now I'm going to set this up for a bypass. We've already tried the foot controller. The foot controller is not working. So we want to determine when we do this bypass, if it fires up, if the motor fires up, then we know the motor is good, and there's either an issue with the foot controller or with our plug-in point right here. So all you do is you take these two stripped wires and you slide them in all the way, like so. So what we're doing now is we're doing the same thing that the foot controller would do, is we're joining these two together to complete that circuit. So what should happen when we turn this converter back on, this one over here, we turn that converter back on, the light should come on, and if the motor's good, you'll see this bobbin spinning up. So let's see what happens. So we know now that our motor is good, right? We know that our motor is good because it's spinning up. We did our bypass, and you could do this on any Swedish Beauty. It doesn't matter if it's US or if it's European. Our light is working. Our motor is working. So that's a huge relief, isn't it? We know now that our motor is good. So I'm going to shut this off again. So now we have some more testing to do. I'm going to take this back out. And we're going to try to determine if our foot controller is bad. Is it getting electricity? Maybe there's a break in this cord somewhere. Maybe the cord is bad. So we're going to plug this in again. And we're going to test the foot controller once again. The other thing I'm going to do before we power ourselves back up is I'm going to take the back of this off so we can test this to see if we're getting electric current all the way into the foot controller itself. And yes, I do have it off right now. You never ever want to open a foot controller if it's plugged into a machine that is powered up, because you'll get a very, very bad shock. You could actually, you could get seriously injured. And I had one person, I think it was from Texas, that had watched one of my videos where I was talking about testing machines, and they didn't realize that the foot controller has as much electricity going through it as any other part of the sewing machine, right? So right now, as we're stepping up this machine up to 230 to 250 volts, we're dealing with, I've got to get my finger underneath there. We're dealing with something that could be very, very dangerous, right? Because as soon as I flip that converter back on, if we're getting electricity to this foot controller, this is being charged with the equivalent of an electric dryer in the US, which means this foot controller, if it's drawing the same voltage as the motor, is going to be drawing 230 volts. That's a lot of volts. You don't want to be touching the inside of the foot controller when it's powered up. You want to treat that like an open outlet, okay? So let me shut the music off real quick. Shut the music off so we can have some silence in the workshop. We're going to power this back up again by flipping our converter on. You can see our light came back on straight away. Our light is on, but the question is this foot controller right now, is it charged or not? Well, there's a way to test that. These are readily available at any hardware store or anywhere else for that matter. And what it does is it detects electricity. So if I turn this on by twisting the end, it's going to beep to tell me that it's working. And if, let's say we want to test, we already know that this light is on, right? You hear that? It's warning us. It's saying, danger, danger, danger. There's voltage there. There's voltage. Now we need to test the foot controller to see if we're getting voltage down here. And right now, well, wait a second. That was a false response. Right now, we're not getting any voltage down here. Again, if we check the light, where am I? Ah! We check the light. We're getting a positive response, right? We can also check the power cord right here that's coming into the machine. See what I'm noticing there? We could have a loose wire in there, couldn't we? We're getting power there. We're not getting any power. Wait a second. Now we are. So I'm inclined to think that our issue is definitely not the motor. We know that now because we already tested the motor using our bypass, right? Again, if you're joining the live stream a little bit late, if you ever get a machine, it doesn't matter if it's one like this that is from London, England, and it's set up for the European voltage of 230 to 250 volts. You can still use a piece of wire like this. This again is 16 gauge wire, and it's rated up to 30 amps. And we know from the plug-in, the fancy plug-in that we stuck into the converter, this one right over here, it says the maximum that it's going to draw is 15 amps. So we know that we're safe in using this as a bypass. And what we did, if you didn't see it, you can always rewind, is we pulled out this foot controller and we stuck the two leads in to create a complete circuit like would happen if we're depressing this foot controller, and then the motor powered up straight away. So we know that the motor's good. And now we're getting a good response from the light, good response from the power cord going in, but we're also seeing that when I touch this, see that? So that tells me that this is going to be part of my normal service anyway. I'm going to have to go through and check all of these contacts inside of there because we've got a little bit of a short in this power cord going into the machine. When I push on that power cord, we shouldn't be getting the light going on and off like that, obviously. And it's giving us intermittent power surges. Now we're getting a real positive response from this foot controller. See that? Before we were getting nothing. And now all of a sudden it's powered up. And that's again where you always side with caution. Whenever you're working with electricity, you could have plugged this in initially and said, hey, there's no power to the foot controller. It's safe to touch. See what could have happened to you? You always assume, it's like a loaded gun. You always assume that even if your initial test is negative, our initial test when we put it on here was negative. We weren't getting any juice to this foot controller. Now, all of a sudden, because I jiggled this wire a little bit, we've got a hot foot controller. It could hurt us seriously because again, the voltage that's in this foot controller right now isn't 110. It's 230 volts. So now I'm curious with us jiggling that, what's going to happen if I push this foot controller down now? Because we've got a bad connection, an intermittent connection, because this power cord is faulty. If I push this down now, is the motor going to fire up? Should we try it? If you think we should try it again, type in the chat. Go for it, Scott. Just have your rubber soled shoes on. Hey, Dr. T and Michelle and all of our other friends. I know that Paula and Emma are making you feel welcome. So if you think we should go for it, Emma's saying, yep, go for it. But I'm going to be extra cautious because if we already know that there's a fault on this power cord going into the machine, because when I pushed it down, that light, you saw the light kind of flicker on and off. So we've got a bad connection coming into the machine. We know it's a good connection. Because we're getting an electrical response from this tester. So now, to be extra cautious, I'm going to take this wooden mallet, just in case this, now that it's charged, because I haven't touched it at all, just in case this being charged up now, with 230 volts, just in case there's somehow a short on this as well, and I could get shocked off of it, very badly shocked. I'm going to use this as a buffer. It's a leather mallet, and it's going to allow me to depress this foot controller without making contact with the metal casing of it, okay? So let's see what happens. Did you hear the motor fire up initially? Now I'm getting nothing. So this tells me the foot controller responded, at least temporarily. It powered up the motor. We already tested the motor using the bypass method, right? So we know the motor is good. We know now that the foot controller is good. We're getting electricity to the foot controller. But we're not getting a clear response from the foot controller in powering up the motor. So my hunch, since we've got faulty wiring over here for the power, we might also have a faulty socket for the foot controller. So I'm going to pull this out, and I'm going to see if I can be multitasked here and push this down, and at the same time jiggle this in the socket to see if we're getting intermittent connectivity with this plug-in as well. I'm guessing we are. That's kind of my guess. So I'm going to move this over a little bit. Now I'm going to plug this in again. But first of all, I'm going to push this all the way down. Okay, so this is all the way down. Now I'm going to try plugging this in slowly and jiggle it a little bit. Hear the motor running? So right now the motor is powering up with our transformer. It's running at 230 volts. Our light is on, running at 250 volts. And so we know that we've isolated the problem now. The problem has been isolated all the way down to this region of the machine right here. Number one, we've got a faulty power cord. See that? That's kind of spooky, isn't it? And you might not be able to hear it with me gabbing, but as I'm pushing that down, it's actually grounding out. Listen real carefully, see if you can hear it. That's our power cord. That's 230 volts coming into this machine, and we've got a faulty connection. We also have faulty connection in here as well for the foot controller. So this is going to be an area that I really have to target on Adam's machine from London, England, so that when he gets it back, it's going to be safe to operate. Right now, we're kind of rolling the dice a little bit, aren't we? We're rolling the dice with a connection that is faulty over here, and it's not so much to the back, is it? It's down. So I say it all the time. You don't take anything for granted. If you buy a machine on eBay, either from Europe and you bring it here, and then you get one of those super cool converters that I've shown you here. And if you're joining the live stream late, this is it's called a step up and a step down converter. And I want to give credit right now to Emma. Emma is the one that kind of turned me onto this and said, Scott, I know you've had concerns in the past about converters not being reliable. They can actually be hazardous. I think they've done a better job now. And as I did more and more research on this particular one, I was very impressed with all of their material describing how they've engineered this to make it safe. Again, whether you're using it like we are to take a machine that was designed to be in London, England, and operate between 230 to 250 volts. You saw that right over here. 230 to 250 volts. And we take 110 volt electricity, and with this converter, we're stepping it all the way up to 250 volts. Or if you're in Europe, like a lot of our friends are, you can plug this same converter in, and you can change that little plug-in point on the back like I showed you. And then you can plug a US machine right here if you're over in Europe and operate it just as easily. So it's really kind of a cool little device. But that doesn't save you when you've got an electrical issue like this machine clearly has. Right now, we've got 230 volts coming in. We know that because, number one, the light's on. And this detector is telling us, warning, warning, electricity, but we've got this short, don't we? So once I take this off of the converter and there's no electricity running through it, because you never want to work with electricity when it's powered up, right? Kind of dangerous. You shut off the breaker, or in this case, we shut off the converter, and then I'll be able to take off this motor cover and go in there and start inspecting the electricity contacts that are in there. There's so many on these Swedish Beauties. There's so many little junction points with tiny little copper screws. And if one of those screws is loose a little bit, this is what you can get. Yep. So I'm really glad that Adam made the investment to send this machine all the way from the United Kingdom, all the way from London, England, so that, number one, we would have a chance to kind of check out this cool converter that I just got. Let me show you the box again in case you didn't see the box. That way, if you want to pick one up, you can do it. And again, it doesn't matter if you're in Europe or if you're in the US. Where's my box? What did I do with my box? Where's my box? So yeah, again, it doesn't matter if you're in Europe or in the US. This one is made by PowerBright. And I'd like to, if you guys could not Google this straight away, because I'd like to ask you, what do you think this converter cost me? What do you think this converter cost me? Again, this is a step up or a step down converter. It's rated up to 200 watts. The average sewing machine, even a Husqvarna like this, is only going to be drawing a little bit over 100 watts. So this converter that's rated for 200 watts technically could power 2 sewing machines, but I wouldn't recommend it. But the deal is it can definitely power 1 very easily. What do you guys think I paid for this? Type in the chat if you want to guess as to what I paid for it before you start Googling it. $100? $200? $50? What do you think? Yeah, what do you think? I'd be curious. So Aaron is saying right around 50 bucks. Any other guesses? Paula's guessing around $125. Well, I can tell you that, and I'll actually tell you that I spent, and this is not reconditioned. This is not an open box. This is brand spanking new. This is brand new out of the box. I paid about $26. $26. $26. And now I've got the ability to service any customer around the world using this little converter, whether they're from the United Kingdom or anywhere else. And Dr. T is saying 1,000-watt models go for $20 US. I actually didn't even see any models that would go up to 1,000 watts, Dr. T. This particular one, and it might just be these makers, but you can see this particular one, Power Bright. And again, when I did the different research on these, some of them are certified, some of them are not. And if I'm going to be taking electricity and stepping it up to 230 volts or 250 volts, I would rather have a model that's gone through a rigorous testing process like this one has. And you can see this one, this particular maker, Power Bright, only goes up to 750 watts. So you could from them get a converter, 750, 500 watts, 300 watts, 200 watts is the one that I bought. I wouldn't bother with 100 watts because, again, with this class 20 model, this Husqvarna, with the light and the motor combined, we're going to be drawing about 105 watts. So we would be outside of the tolerance of this one. You could either go with a 200 watt or a 300 watt. So it's possible that Dr. T over in Finland, if y'all don't know, this gentleman right here, there he is. This gentleman right here on the bottom, he just typed something in the chat. This gentleman right here is from Finland. So it's possible in the Finland marketplace, they've got some other options that we don't hear. But at least with this one that I bought, that I would strongly recommend it. You've seen it do a real good job for us during this live stream today, providing us with reliable light and power for this Husqvarna. And again, the Husqvarnas and the FOF machines are going to be the biggest drawers of voltage and amperage. So if this little converter that I got for right around $26 can support this Husqvarna, which is going to have one of the larger motors, I think it would do a real good job for you on most any sewing machine. And if you're, if you're wanting to go for the gusto, you could always get a 300 watt, a 500 watt, or a 750 watt. But for those of us that are in the VSM, I'm guessing that the 200 watt would serve you very nicely. So, yeah. Store in a well-ventilated area. Do not expose to direct sunlight. Keep out of the reach of children. Yeah, we kind of figured that one out. Keep away from water, moisture, grease, and oil. Keep away from any flammable substance. So maybe what I should do when I'm not, because it says keep away from grease and oil, even though it's all the way over here in kind of a safe area in the workshop, and it's away from this workbench over here, and it's away from this workbench over here, maybe I should put some sort of a cover on this when I'm not using it. Maybe just like throw a little plastic bag over it or something. Yeah, maybe I'll do that. But hopefully you found this interesting. And again, if you kind of if you joined the chat a little bit late, the converter that I got will support machines in the US by stepping up the voltage from 110 up to 250 volts. And if you're over in Europe, like our friend Dr. T over in Finland, you can get this and plug it in with an adapter, and then you can step down the voltage over there from 230 or 240 all the way down to 110, and then you could plug a sewing machine in from the US over in the European marketplace. So that's kind of cool. It goes either way. Back in the day, converters were one directional. They would either step the voltage up, and most people referred to them as inverters, kind of like the ones we use in our cars, or they would step down the voltage like the ones I used in Germany when I was living there, but they wouldn't do both ways. Now they've developed and perfected the technology, so they've got units like this that, again, weigh less than 2 pounds, that can step up the voltage from 110 to 250 or step down the voltage from 250 all the way to 110. So you got the best of both worlds. And if you were traveling internationally, you could easily put this into a checked bag or something like that, pad it up, pad it like anything that's fragile. And you could carry this in your check baggage. And then when you get to that country, wherever you are, with a proper adapter, you can plug this into that outlet and you could operate all of your stuff at 110. Again, remember, when you're using something like this, I'm going to flip it off just temporarily. When you're using something like this, always remember you've got to set it up for success. And that means on the back of here, you've got this plug-in point right here. And I'm going to be extra safe and unplug this so we don't have any electricity pre-charging this. So again, if you're over in Europe, like our friend Dr. T, you would pull this out and you would plug it into the 240 before you plugged this with the adapter into the outlet in Finland. And then you would be able to plug a sewing machine rated for the US into that outlet on the front here. But again, if you're using it in the US, you want to make sure that you plug this into the 110 as far as the input of the electricity coming into this converter, okay? And I don't know, quite honestly, with the European marketplace predominantly going to 230 volts, I don't know why they have these other intermediary ones. If someone wants to Google right now, because again, sometimes a teacher, always a student, we can always learn from each other, can't we? Check right now by going into Google. Oops. If one of the moderators, it looks like, oh, I see why they flagged him. Dr. T, just a reminder again, you got to choose your language, my friend. When you write something like the bull, and everyone can see what Dr. T wrote, YouTube is going to flag it, and unless one of the moderators or myself approves it, they're not going to let stuff like this come through because they've got filters for what they consider to be inappropriate language. So if one of the moderators wants to either hide this or delete it, and Dr. T is basically he's saying some of the specs can be not reliable. Could have been another way of him writing it, right? You can go ahead and do that. But Dr. T's point is well taken. And that's why when you go with something like this that has the potential to be dangerous, you want to make sure that that device has been vetted and certified. And it doesn't matter the specs then that they put on it. There's been an independent source that has inspected this converter and vetted it to make sure that it's safe to operate. That's part of the reason that I went with this. along with the fact that it also comes with the extra fuses and stuff as well. Yep, yep, YouTube does flake stuff like that, Dr. T. They do indeed. So yeah, just just be wise consumers. Again, you don't have to go with this model, but I did a fair amount of research into it, and out of any of the models that I could find at least, and I did purchase this through eBay. This was purchased through eBay, and again, very prompt UPS shipping. I believe it had free shipping if I remember correctly. And again, I spent less than $30, less than 30 bucks on it. So it just really opens up the horizons to possibilities, doesn't it? Whether you are wanting to, you've seen a real cool machine over that's being sold outside of the US, and you said, yeah, but it's rated for US, it's rated for European voltage. I can't do anything with that. And now you can with a converter like this. So yeah, kind of a fun opportunity to come together, kind of check this out together, right? I'm going to go ahead and flip the switch back on again. And this machine does make me a little bit nervous just because we know that there clearly is a wiring issue now with it. And if you join the live stream a little bit late, the wiring issue is we've got this power cord coming in right now, which because of our converter is taking 110 volts and it's stepping it all the way up to 250 volts. Because the light requires 250, the motor inside of here only requires 230 volts. And we've already done all of the testing. You can rewind that and look at it again. But again, if you're ever working with electricity, picking up one of these at your hardware store or at a retailer is a real good idea. It's going to be a voltage detector. So if there's any electricity coming in, let's say that we were to shut this light off temporarily by pushing this little switch, we can still determine, even though that light is off, that socket that this bulb plugs into is charged up right now with 250 volts of electricity. So that's where having one of these voltage detectors could literally save your life. When it's on, it's clear that it's on, right? When it's off, you've got to understand that that socket is still being charged with electricity. And in this instance, 250 volts of electricity. So be real careful if you decide to pick up one of these converters. Be real careful that you're being extra cautious. Be extra cautious, please. We don't want anyone to get hurt or, worse yet, seriously injured or killed because of the dangers of electricity, especially when you're using a converter like this to take 110 and step it all the way up to 250 volts. So where I'm going to be concentrating on this machine is going to be concentrating in this region in particular because of our short in the power cord. See that? We've got a short in the power cord coming into the machine. And then we also have a plug-in point here that is not reliable either. If you missed it earlier, we kind of pushed the foot controller down using this wooden mallet, and we got intermittent response from the motor. I'll do that again for you if you happen to miss it. So I'm only plugging this in part of the way to make contact, but when I plug it all the way in, like it normally would be used, right now it's plugged all the way in, and I've got the foot controller all the way down, I'm not getting a response. The motor is not firing up. So that right away gives us the ability to narrow it down to this plug-in point. See that? I'm not going to goof around with it anymore, but you get the idea. And again, if you arrived a little bit late, before we determined that the foot controller was okay and the problem is over here, and you can do this with any machine as long as the wiring is rated properly. Again, the plug-in that came with this machine from Adam from London, England, this plug-in right here has a schematic rating on the back of it that says it will max out at around 15 amps. 16 gauge wire that you can buy at Home Depot or anywhere else. This type of wiring right here is rated for up to 30 amps. Some people even argue higher than that. But when you're trying to diagnose an issue with a machine, we can see that the light is working, right? But we don't know with this foot controller plugged in and the fact that the machine is not firing up, at least it didn't initially. Now it is. So we got some definite issues with this plug-in point. Now it's happy again. But initially when we tested it, we had this plugged in, we pushed down the foot controller, we didn't get any response, but we knew the foot controller was charged up because we tested it with this voltage detector. So again, don't go under the assumption if you're testing a machine that you purchased and you push the foot controller down and the motor doesn't fire up, don't assume, just like I showed you with the light, don't assume that that is not charged with electricity. This right now, when we pushed it down before, no response, but it's still charged with electricity. Just like when we shut the light off, this is still charged with electricity. So the whole point of my blah, blah, blahing is be careful. Be real careful, because what you think is off could be on. It could be charged, especially if you're using a converter like this, charged with 250 volts of electricity. And you assume because the light is off that it's safe to work inside of there, maybe cleaning the contacts or something where this bulb screws into. Don't do that unless you unplug it completely to be extra safe, okay? And if you're getting a non-response like we were initially with a plug-in, you can bypass it like I showed you using two wires like this, or using a single wire, I should say, and plugging it into the sockets so that you can complete that circuit for the motor. So if I plug this other one in right now, we're going to see that motor, even though we don't have the foot controller plugged in, we're going to see that motor fire up. So again, just a really great way to be able to determine, is the problem with the motor? Is the problem with the foot controller? If you're not getting a good response from a machine that you happen to have in your sewing space. Okay? All right. I could blah, blah, blah all day long, but this has been kind of fun. I'm going to go ahead and shut that off. Also, I'm going to shut off my power source as well, so we're no longer stepping this up to 250 volts. And now we can go over to the machine if we wanted to do that. And we could determine that it's safe to check it out now, because there shouldn't be. What is this thing doing? Oh, you know what? Isn't that interesting? So we just learned something together, didn't we? Based on the way this plug is set up, this is really valuable. I didn't realize this either. Based on the way this plug is set up, even though we've got the step-up converter off, the plug is still plugged in, and there is a fuse inside of here. There's a fuse inside of here, and it's like some electrical components where it will store part of that energy. It'll store part of that energy in this adapter that has that fuse in there. and we still are getting a positive electrical response. See what happens if we unplug it. Okay, so what a valuable lesson that we just discovered. One would assume when you shut this step-up converter off that this would no longer be charged. But because this has a fuse inside of it, it's got a fuse that will support up to 13 amps. It has a reserve of electricity that is being fed into this thing when it's plugged in. So what we should learn from this is, even though we shut this off, as long as we had this plugged in, it was still feeding by way of this plug some level of electricity. Maybe it was only 110, but it was still feeding something to that machine over there. So let's revise our plan of safety now and say, if you're working with one of these converters, don't just shut it off before you go to work on that machine. Unplug it as well, because we can't rely on, at least with this type of plug-in, we can't rely on the fact that the step-up source is shut off. It's still going to be drawing some amperage. 250 volts, 13 amps. Yeah, valuable lesson. Very valuable lesson. I didn't actually know that. Like I said, sometimes a teacher, always a student. I just learned something myself. So, all right. Well, thanks again. If Adam sees this, thanks again to Adam for sending this really cool Class 20 Husqvarna. Again, Class 20s came out in the late 1940s. They were made into the 1950s. This is going to have a European rated motor. And again, the thing about motors in the European marketplace is they're going to be rated at less amps than the US. So if in the US would have, say, a 1 amp motor, if you look at this motor casing for this European model, it's going to be rated probably around 0.5 or 0.6. And that is because it offsets that lower amperage with higher voltage. We need more amps in the US because we have less voltage than they do over in the European marketplace. Over in Europe, they've got higher voltage, again, typically around 230. And so you need less amperage to get the same output from the motor. But anyway, thanks for joining me. I'll let you guys chat for a little bit. I'm going to look at some of the chat myself. Just see if I missed anything critical. Yeah, and Paula had said, this answers my question that it stores electricity. Yeah, and that may not be true of all plugs. This plug, again, is set up that Adam sent with the machine, that it has a reservoir amp type fuse in there. So it is clearly storing some energy, because even with this step-up converter shut off, we still had both the light and the motor and the power cord coming into it charged up. So that's kind of spooky, isn't it? Didn't realize that. Just seeing if there's anyone else that I need to hello to real quick. Doesn't look like it. All right. Well, thanks for joining this live stream, everybody. I can't believe that I was expecting this to be about a 15 or 20-minute live stream. And because of the different things that we discovered together and also wanting to explain things in detail to you, we ran an hour and 16 minutes. Hey! Well, let me turn the music back on. Let you guys chat for a little bit if you'd like. And again, if you're interested in getting a converter, or if you want to get one like I got, this is the one that I picked up. Just kind of show you the box again. Set that right there. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great Tuesday. And thank you to the moderating team as well. Thank you to, I didn't see if Sunny is here, but if Sunny was here, thank you, Sunny. Thank you, Emma. And thank you, Paula, as well, for taking very good care of our family while I was trying to explain different things and show you different things on this Husqvarna machine and on this really cool converter as well. So God bless you guys, and have a great rest of the day. Again, I'll let the live stream stay on for a little bit. If you want to chat more, make new friendships, that's totally cool. Otherwise, be safe out there. I love that we can learn things together as we did today, but electricity is dangerous. And especially when you're taking electricity that's 110 and you're stepping it all the way up to 250 volts, you can get hurt, or you can even have other issues like fires and other things like that if you're not being extra careful. So let's be extra careful, but by all means, check things out and pick up one of these if you are thinking about maybe going online and buying a machine from Europe. And that way you'll be able to set this up and power that machine from Europe in your sewing space. And it'd be kind of a fun thing to have somebody come over as well that's in your quilting group or in a sewing class or whatever. And they come over to your place and you go, oh, hey, by the way, let's use this machine and we're going to be running it at 250 volts. And they'll look at you like you're crazy. And then you can explain how you're able to do that. Yeah. Cool. Love it. Okay, Mr. Bean, I understand. The machine is from London, England, and you're a London guy. I get it. Chill out, man. Here. There you go. Now you're in the picture. Don't block the watts here, buddy. Yeah. That's a fun song. It's kind of chilly down here today. I had to put my other jacket on. All right. Well, I'll go ahead and end the live stream. Again, thanks for everybody popping on. And isn't it great to learn new things together and to discover new possibilities that we wouldn't have imagined before? Being able to operate machines that are designed for one marketplace and use them in the US, or vice versa. Our friends that are over in Europe saying, I'd really love to get one of Scott's machines, but it's set up for the US voltage. And now they can pick up one of these and operate that machine over in Europe. Doesn't matter where they're at. So yeah, good stuff. All right, take care, everybody. I'll go ahead and end the live stream and watch for other live streams and premieres and make new friendships. As I'm looking over here at the chat, it's so cool to see all the folks popping up and becoming acquainted. I know a number of you have made new friendships as a result of live streams and premieres as well. So that's super cool to be able to make new friends with people from all around the world and share a love of vintage sewing machines, right? Yeah, okay. Ending the live stream now. Oh, you want to push the button, Mr. Bean? Okay. All right, hold on. See if we can do this. You're going to use your nose? Okay. Let's see if this works. All right. Give it a go, buddy. Give it a go. End the live stream. Well done. Well done. Look at you. And you got to click it one more time to end it, Mr. Bean. One more time, my friend. One more time. Let me line this up for you because you can't do that with your nose. All right, give it a go, buddy. Ending the live stream now. Mr. Bean is doing it. Thank you, Mr. Bean. All right. All right. Push it, buddy. Push. Ha ha. Yeah.